It was one of those crisp October afternoons where the air smelled like fallen leaves and promise, the kind of day that made you feel alive even if you were stuck inside a high school choir room. I was a junior then, 16 years old, standing shoulder to shoulder with about 30 other kids, our voices weaving together in a harmony that felt like it could lift the roof off the building. The room itself was this hidden gem behind the auditorium, wood-paneled walls, a scuffed upright piano, and tiered risers that creaked under our weight. We were mid-song, some old hymn about grace that our director, Ms. Harper, had picked because she said it reminded her of second chances. Ms. Harper was the kind of woman who lived on black coffee and conviction, always in a cardigan. Her graying hair pulled into a messy bun, her eyes sharp but kind. She'd been teaching us to sing like we meant it, like every note was a piece of our souls we were handing over to the world. That day, we were giving it everything, the sound swelling around us. When the intercom cut through like a jagged knife, the principal's voice didn't just interrupt, it shattered. "Lockdown," he said, the word trembling, raw, like he'd forgotten how to breathe. "This is not a drill. Stay where you are." There was a crackle, then silence, and the room seemed to shrink around us. My stomach dropped, a cold wave rushing through me, pinning my feet to the floor. 30 voices faltered, then stopped. The hymn hanging unfinished in the air like a ghost. I looked at Mia, my best friend since 5th grade, her dark curls framing a face that had gone pale. Her eyes met mine, wide, searching, and I knew she felt it too, that sudden, sickening certainty that something was very wrong. Ms. Harper didn't hesitate. She moved like she'd rehearsed this 1,000 times, though I'd never seen her so much as flinch before. "Door," she hissed, darting to the heavy oak slab that separated us from the hallway. The lock clicked with a sound that felt final, like a gate slamming shut. "Lights," she added, flicking them off, plunging us into a dim haze where the only glow came from the late afternoon sun seeping through the high, narrow windows. "Under the risers, go." Her voice was low, urgent, but steady, a lifeline in the chaos. We stumbled over each other, a clumsy herd of kids who'd been laughing about weekend plans 5 minutes ago, now crawling beneath the wooden platforms that had held us up during every rehearsal. The space was tight, maybe 2 feet high, 3 feet deep, splinters snagging my sweater as I slid in next to Mia. Our knees pressed into the cold tile, our shoulders brushing, and I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow, like a bird caught in a net. We waited. The silence was suffocating, thick with the weight of not knowing. Then came the sound, footsteps, heavy and uneven, thudding down the hallway beyond the door. They weren't casual, not the janitor's shuffle or a teacher's hurried stride. These were deliberate, erratic, like someone stalking a prey they hadn't yet found. A voice followed, low and guttural, words slurring into a growl I couldn't quite make out, something about scores and paying. My chest tightened, a vice squeezing my ribs. Mia's hand found mine, her fingers icy, gripping so hard I could feel her pulse racing against my skin. I squeezed back, not because I was brave, but because it was all I had to give her. Around us, the others were statues, some breathing too fast, some not at all, their silhouettes barely visible in the shadows. The footsteps stopped. Right outside our door. I held my breath, every muscle locked, waiting for the handle to rattle, for the wood to splinter. Instead, there was a thud, fist on wall, maybe, and that voice again, louder now, spitting venom. "You can't hide forever," it snarled, and I pictured a man I'd never seen, his eyes wild, his hands clenched into weapons. My mind raced, who was he? Why us? Was this about some old grudge, a forgotten slight, or just chaos wearing a human face? The fear wasn't just for me, it was for Mia, for the kid next to me whose name I couldn't remember, for Ms. Harper, who'd spent her life teaching us to find beauty in sound. I wanted to scream, to run. But there was nowhere to go. Then Ms. Harper did something I'll never forget. She started humming. It was faint, almost lost in the hum of my own panic, but it was there, our warm-up tune, the one we'd sung every day for months, a simple melody that looped like a heartbeat. She was crouched near the piano, her silhouette a dark curve against the wall, and that sound slipped out of her like a thread of light. At first, I thought she'd lost it. Why hum now, when we were one breath from disaster? But Mia heard it too. Her grip softened, just a fraction, and she whispered, "Listen." One by one, we caught it, heads tilting, ears straining, and something shifted. A boy across from me, barely audible, joined in. Then another. I felt the vibration in my throat before I realized I was doing it too, a murmur so soft it was more feeling than sound. Mia followed, her voice trembling but there, weaving into mine. It wasn't loud, couldn't be, but it was ours, a fragile rebellion against the darkness pressing in. The footsteps moved on. The voice faded, swallowed by the hallway's echo, and we kept humming, a lifeline strung between us. I don't know how long we stayed like that, 10 minutes, 20, but it felt like hours, each note a tether to the world we'd known. The intercom crackled again, the principal's voice steadier now, all clear. Suspect in custody. We crawled out, shaky, blinking in the dim light as Ms. Harper flipped the switches back on. She looked at us, her eyes glistening, not with fear, but something fiercer. "You're stronger than you know," she said, and I believed her. Later, we learned the truth. An ex-student, barely 20, had stormed the school with a crowbar and a head full of rage. No gun, thank God, just a need to break something, maybe himself most of all. He'd smashed a trophy case 50 feet from our room before the cops tackled him in the parking lot. The why didn't matter as much as the what we'd done in that shadowed space beneath the risers. Mia hugged me after, her voice thick. That song, it held us together. She was right. It wasn't just survival, it was a choice to hold on to who we were, even when the world outside turned ugly. That year, we sang louder. Every rehearsal became a promise, to ourselves, to each other, that fear wouldn't silence us. Ms. Harper started every class with that same tune, and we'd grin, a secret shared in the notes. I think about it now, years later, when life gets heavy. That day taught me something deep. Fear can shake you, but it's what you build in its shadow that matters. For us, it was a song, a quiet, stubborn thread of grace that pulled us through. I carry it still, a melody that reminds me we're never as alone as we think, even in the dark. It was late October of my senior year, the kind of evening where the sky hung heavy with clouds and the air carried a bite that made you pull your jacket tighter. I was 17, sprawled across a stool in the AP Physics lab, surrounded by the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the sharp tang of burnt wires from a circuit I'd botched earlier. The room was a cluttered sanctuary, long tables littered with resistors and voltmeters, shelves sagging under dusty textbooks, a chalkboard scrawled with equations that looked like hieroglyphs to anyone but us. There were 6 of us there, a ragtag crew of overachievers staying late for a study session, plus Mr. Diaz, our teacher. He was this wiry guy in his 40s. All wild hair and wilder ideas, the kind of man who'd rather talk about black holes than grades. That night, he was pacing, scribbling something about velocity on the board, when the PA system screeched to life. "Lockdown," the voice said, our vice principal, usually so calm, now clipped and brittle. "This is not a drill. Hide." The words landed like a punch, sucking the air out of the room. My hands froze mid-doodle, pencil clattering to the table. I glanced at Jake, my lab partner, his usual smirk gone, replaced by a flicker of something I'd never seen in him, uncertainty. Mr. Diaz didn't flinch. He flicked off the lights with a single, practiced motion, plunging us into a gray twilight where the only illumination came from the faint glow of emergency exits. Behind the tables, he whispered, his voice steady but urgent, like a captain steering through a storm. We scrambled, knocking over stools, crouching behind the row of lab benches nearest the wall. Mr. Diaz dragged a telescope case, some relic from an astronomy unit we'd never gotten to, across the floor, propping it up as a flimsy shield. I pressed my back against the cold metal edge of the table, my knees drawn up, my breath shallow and ragged. The silence that followed was unbearable, a thick, living thing that pressed against my eardrums. We were a tight knot of bodies, Jake to my left, his elbow digging into my ribs, Sarah, the quiet girl who always aced tests, on my right, her glasses fogging with every exhale. Then came the sound, a crash, sharp and violent, echoing from the gym across the courtyard, maybe 100 feet away. Glass shattering, unmistakable, followed by a low, guttural shout that didn't sound entirely human. My heart slammed against my chest, each beat a hammer strike. "Shooter," Sarah mouthed, her eyes wide behind those fogged lenses. Jake muttered, "If I go down, tell my mom I finally got an A." It was a weak attempt at a joke. His voice trembling, but it drew a stifled hut from me, half laugh, half sob. We didn't know what was out there, only that it was close, and we were trapped in a room that suddenly felt too small, too fragile. I tried to focus, to anchor myself, but my mind spun, images of headlines, of drills we'd laughed through, of my little brother at home waiting for me to pick him up from soccer. The lab, once a place of equations and quiet triumphs, now felt like a cage. The shouting grew louder, then faded, then surged again, a tidal wave of rage rolling through the night. I pressed my palms to the floor, the tile cold and unyielding, and wondered if this was how it ended, not with a bang, but with us huddled here, waiting. That's when Mr. Diaz did something I'll carry with me forever. He pulled his phone from his pocket, the screen's faint glow casting shadows across his face, and opened an app one didn't recognize. "Look," he said, his voice so low it was almost lost in the hum of my own fear. He tilted the phone toward the tiny window above us, a slit of glass no wider than a textbook. "Orion's out there. Find it." It was absurd. We were hiding from God knows what, and he wanted us to stargaze. But his eyes, dark, steady, unyielding, held mine, and I couldn't look away. I craned my neck, squinting through the window into the clouded sky, searching for something I wasn't sure I'd see. Jake shifted beside me, peering up too, his breath slowing. Sarah adjusted her glasses, tilting her head. One by one, we looked, not because we understood, but because it was something to hold on to. The clouds parted, just a sliver, and there it was, Orion's belt, 3 faint pinpricks of light against the vast, indifferent dark. I traced them in my mind, the hunter, eternal, unmoved by the chaos below. My chest loosened. Just a fraction, and I felt the others shift too, their breathing sinking with mine. It wasn't escape, it was defiance, a quiet refusal to let fear own us completely. The shouting stopped eventually, replaced by the distant wail of sirens. Time stretched, minutes bleeding into each other, until the PA crackled again. "All clear," the vice principal said, exhaustion lacing his words. "Threat contained." We crawled out, stiff and shaky, the lab coming back into focus, overturned stools, scattered papers, the telescope case still propped against the table. Mr. Diaz stood, brushing chalk dust off his hands, and grinned, a tired, lopsided thing. "You're astronomers now," he said, and we laughed. A raw, jagged sound that broke the tension like glass. Later, we pieced it together, a guy off his meds, spiraling hard, had smashed a gym window with a bat he'd found in the dumpster. No gun, no plan, just a storm of anger that burned itself out. Cops hauled him off after half an hour, 200 feet from where we'd crouched. He wasn't a threat anymore, but the echo of that night lingered. I couldn't shake it, the crash, the fear, the stars. Neither could the others. A week later, Jake showed up with a beat-up telescope he'd snagged from a garage sale, $20 well spent. "We're doing this," he said, and we did. Half of us started a stargazing club, meeting on the football field every Friday night, that telescope wobbling on its tripod as we hunted constellations, Orion, Cassiopeia, the Big Dipper. Mr. Diaz came too, pointing out nebulae with that same quiet fire in his voice. Those nights weren't just about stars. They were about us, 6 kids who'd stared into the dark and found something worth keeping. I'd always thought physics was about formulas, about pinning the world down with numbers, but that lockdown showed me it was more. It was about motion, yes, but also about stillness, the way we'd held our ground, the way we'd looked up when everything screamed to look down. I think about it now, years later, when the world feels too loud, too unsteady. Orion's still out there, a hunter in the sky, and I'm still here, a kid who learned that wonder can bloom in the cracks of fear. That even in the tightest corners, there's room to breathe, to dream. That night didn't break us, it lit something new, a spark we carried forward, a constellation of our own making. I was 24, barely out of grad school, still figuring out who I was supposed to be when I took a job as a computer intern at my old high school. It wasn't glamorous, most of my days were spent in the basement, a sprawling, musty labyrinth of concrete walls, flickering fluorescent tubes, and tangled cables that snaked across the floor like veins. But there was this little office down there, a hidden oasis amid the chaos, 3 wide desks polished to a shine, 2 humming mini fridges stocked with soda, a flat-screen TV bolted to the wall playing reruns of old sitcoms on mute, and air conditioning so crisp it felt like a luxury the upstairs world could only dream of. The server's word in the corner. A steady pulse of white noise that became my soundtrack. I'd landed the gig thanks to 3 teachers, Mr. Evans, Ms. Patel, and Mr. Kim, who'd seen something in me back when I was a gangly kid fumbling through their computer classes. They weren't just mentors, they were friends now, the kind who'd text me dumb memes or grab coffee with me on weekends. That basement office was my first real foothold in the adult world, and for a while, it felt like home. It was a Tuesday in early March, the kind of day where the sky outside was a flat, unyielding gray, and the clock seemed to drag its feet. I was alone, my coworkers, Dave and Gary, were upstairs wrestling with some budget spreadsheet, leaving me to my lunch break. I sat at my desk, unwrapping a turkey sandwich, the bread soft against my fingers, the faint tang of mustard cutting through the basement's stale air. The TV flickered with a laugh track I couldn't hear, and I was halfway through a bite when my phone buzzed, a call from the front office. It was Cheryl, the receptionist, her voice usually warm and chatty, now tight as a wire. "We're on lockdown," she said, each word clipped, precise. "Someone's in the building. Might be armed. Stay where you are." The line went dead before I could ask anything, and the sandwich slipped from my hands, landing with a soft thud on the desk. Panic hit me like a wave, cold and relentless, flooding my chest. I stared at the open doorway, no door, just a gaping rectangle leading into the basement's dim expanse. The main door to the stairs, 20 feet away, was a rusted slab with a lock that hadn't worked in years. I was exposed, a sitting duck in a room that suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a trap. My hands trembled as I flicked off the lights, the room plunging into a murky haze where the only glow came from the server's blinking LEDs. I killed my computer screen next, the blue glow vanishing, leaving me in near darkness. My phone stayed on the desk, its screen a faint lifeline as I texted Dave and Gary, "You okay? What's happening?" No reply. I sank to the floor behind my desk, knees pulled to my chest, the carpet rough against my palms. For 20 minutes, I waited, playing mindless games on my phone, Candy Crush, of all things, the colors blurring as my mind raced. Every creak of the building, every hum of the pipes overhead, became a threat. I pictured my mom at home, oblivious, stirring soup on the stove, my sister in college, texting me about her latest crush. I wasn't ready to lose that, not here, not now. Then it came, the sound that stopped my heart. The basement door groaned open, a slow, grating creak that echoed across the concrete like a warning. Footsteps followed, heavy and fast, thudding down the stairs with a rhythm that wasn't casual, wasn't safe. My breath caught, a ragged gasp I couldn't stifle, and I pressed myself tighter against the desk, the wood digging into my spine. The footsteps slowed as they neared the office, deliberate now, like a predator closing in. I peered through the gap beneath the desk, my pulse hammering in my ears, and saw a shadow stretch across the floor, boots, jeans, the hem of a plaid shirt swaying as he stepped inside. He didn't turn on the lights, didn't speak, just stood there, a dark shape against the faint glow from the hall. The silence was worse than any sound, a void that swallowed me whole. I couldn't see his face, but I felt him, his presence thick, oppressive, like the air before a storm breaks. My phone dinged. A text. The sound was tiny, a single chime, but in that stillness, it was a gunshot. I froze, teeth clenched, my entire body coiling as the footsteps shifted, closer now, deliberate, homing in. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe, only act. I lunged out from under the desk, scrambling to my feet, my voice breaking as I shouted, "Don't kill me. Please, don't." The words tumbled out, raw and desperate, a plea I hadn't planned. Hands grabbed my arm, strong but not rough, pulling me up. I blinked into the dimness, and there he was, a guy, maybe 30, in a red plaid shirt, jeans, a reddish-black cap tilted low over his eyes. His face was hard, lined with something I couldn't read, anger. Fear, maybe both, but his voice was steady. "It's okay," he said, low and quick. "I'm hiding too. What's going on up there?" Relief crashed over me, shaky and fragile, and I pointed toward the basement exit, 50 feet down the hall. "That way," I stammered, my mind still reeling. He nodded, but something in his eyes flickered, a shadow I didn't catch until it was too late. I glanced at my phone, the screen still lit with the text I hadn't read. It was from Dave. "Dude, some guy shot Mr. Buckley. Red shirt, hat. Stay down there." My stomach plunged, a sick, sinking drop that stole the air from my lungs. I looked up, and he was watching me, those eyes narrowing, catching the shift in mine. He knew I knew. Time splintered. I bolted, legs pumping, adrenaline burning through me as I sprinted for the stairs. A gunshot cracked behind me, deafening in the confined space, the bullet pinging off a metal pipe with a sharp whine. I didn't stop, didn't look back, just ran, up the stairs, through the door, into the blinding light of the main hall where cops swarmed. Guns drawn. "Down there." I gasped, and they moved, a blur of blue and black, storming the basement. They caught him at the exit, seconds after he emerged, his hands empty now, the gun abandoned somewhere in the dark. I collapsed against the wall, legs jelly, breath tearing at my throat. Dave found me minutes later, his face pale, clapping my shoulder like he needed to feel I was real. "Buckley's okay," he said, voice thick. "Took it in the arm, gonna make it." Relief hit me again, sharper this time, mingled with a tremor I couldn't shake. They pieced it together later, the guy was an ex-boyfriend of Buckley's sister, some old wound festering into violence. No one knew why he'd come that day. Only that he'd fired once upstairs before fleeing to the basement, crossing my path in a twist of fate I still can't unravel. That gunshot echoes in me still, a sound that splits time, before and after. I went back to the basement the next week, sat at that desk, stared at the sandwich stain on the carpet. Dave and Gary hovered, cracking dumb jokes to pull me out of it, and I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I kept the job, needed to, wanted to, but it was different. The office wasn't a haven anymore, it was a reminder of how close I'd come, of how fragile safety is. Yet there's something else it left me with, a gratitude, bone deep, for the people who got me through. Dave's text, Cheryl's call, the cops' boots pounding down those stairs, they were threads in a net that caught me when I fell. I see Mr. Buckley sometimes, his arm scarred but his laugh intact, and we don't talk about it, just nod, a quiet understanding. Life's louder now, more precious, and I carry that basement with me, not as a weight, but as a lesson. We're breakable, but we're not alone. For the 24-year-old narrator, that March day in the basement began as a quiet pause in a new chapter, sandwich in hand, surrounded by the hum of servers and the comfort of a job he'd earned through years of connection with mentors who believed in him. But when Cheryl's call shattered the stillness, announcing a lockdown and a possible armed intruder, the basement morphed from a haven into a crucible of fear. Hiding behind his desk, heart pounding as footsteps descended, he faced the raw edge of mortality, only to confront the intruder himself, a man in a red plaid shirt whose gunshot missed by inches. Fleeing to safety, he emerged shaken but alive, forever marked by the echo of that moment. Buckley survived, the cops prevailed, and the basement remained, but for him, it became a testament to fragility, gratitude, and the unspoken bonds that held him through the dark. What this story whispers to us is profound. Life can turn on a dime, stripping away the illusions of safety we cling to, yet in that vulnerability lies a quiet, unshakable strength, the kind forged not in isolation, but in the threads of human connection. The narrator didn't survive alone. It was Cheryl's warning, Dave's text, the cop's swift response, and even Buckley's resilience that wove a net beneath him. Today, we can apply this by cherishing the small acts, checking in on a friend, trusting our instincts, or simply being present for someone in crisis. It's a reminder that we're breakable, yes, but never beyond repair when we lean on each other. So, pause amidst the rush of your own life, nurture those ties, and hold tight to the people who light your way. They're the ones who'll catch you when the basement floor falls out. If this story hit you as hard as it did me, please smash that subscribe button. Your support fuels more gripping tales like this, real, raw, and packed with lessons we can all carry forward. Let's keep this journey going. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.